Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing my experience of growing my own food in my own allotment, my own vegetable garden, kitchen garden as I like to call it, after nearly 30 years of growing my own food. Now, coming up this week, we have been having some adventures going on in the home plot with work being carried out on my new driveway, and that has led to some interesting observations. The allotment has been struggling in the heat, and then finally I've heard some news about more ladybirds. So, without much ado, let's get into it. Well, here I am in the kitchen garden here at home, and we did get some rain last week, but that was followed by a heat wave. Now, because of this, I've held off from planting any of our plants, just because I'm trying to look after what I already have in the ground, make sure they survive, and we'll just hold off from planting anything else out until the heat wave passes. However, the big news has been that my driveway on Monday work started. Now, my driveway, my front garden if you like, is quite a big area for where I grow a lot of fruit and vegetables. It's a multi-use area because we do park our cars on it, but at the same time I don't want to waste any space in order to grow more food. Now, my front garden was certainly where we grew that. I had lots of pots out there of fruit trees, fruit bushes, you name it, I had it growing out there, which of course last week was moved out to my back garden. Now, my old driveway, which was ripped up on Monday, was a combination of basically a concrete slab to make up most of the driveway, and then we had some gravel areas around it as well. And what I found really interesting is that my driveway was ripped up, exposing some of this soil. Now, some of this soil hadn't been exposed for nearly 100 years. My house was built in 1938. The driveway would have got in at that same time. And I managed to have a look at the soil when it was exposed, and what I rapidly noticed is that it looked dead. What I mean by that is I'm on a hard clay soil, and that's all it was, clay, maybe a bit of stone thrown in there as well. But there was no worms, there was no signs of life in that soil at all, no organic matter. Now, this is a stark contrast to what I have outside in my beds, in my vegetable garden. Just purely, I can stick a spade into my ground and I will find it teeming with life, worms, you know, all the good stuff that we want to see in our soil, as well as, of course, plenty of organic matter, which is one of the main reasons, of course, we add compost to our beds, rotted horse manure. It just brings that soil to life. It brings in all those worms. It makes the soil of a good quality. What was really encouraging was just seeing the difference in the soil. It was really quite eye-opening, and it made me realise just why we do all this, incorporating organic matter all the time. Now, added to that, one of the things that has also happened is we had some problems with the surfaces that run underneath our driveway. Now, this was our water supply and our drains. Now, again, these have been there since the house was built nearly 100 years ago. And it's not, again, something that you think about. It goes on underneath our soils. And what we found is that our water mains actually had a very small leak on it. It's probably been leaking for quite a while. There was no way we would have seen it. It was basically a steel pipe that was weeping through from rust. I mean, in the soil for nearly 100 years, what do you expect? So, with that being exposed, we obviously got that repaired. And then we also had problems with our drains, which are also in need of being repaired as well. Now, you might be wondering, what has this got to do with vegetable gardening? This is the thing, is that we were quite lucky. This hadn't actually caused us a problem, but we wouldn't have known until we dug up our driveway. But what got me wondering is, what if these services run underneath my vegetable garden? What would happen? This is a bit of a thought experiment with you. Let's say underneath your vegetable garden, or even your allotment, you may have a water pipe or a drain pipe. What if that suddenly breaks and we end up having to dig up all our vegetables in order to access those pipes? Would your veg garden need ripping up? Or would something that you had planted in that garden, say garlic last year or something, would that hard work be wasted if this all happened? Now, luckily, it's not something that is in my case. All my vegetable gardens are out the back, apart from my pots. So it's not a problem for me. But it got me thinking, what would happen? What should we do to try and mitigate this? And I certainly think checking our deeds to find out where services run, getting a meter to check what's going on under the soil before putting in a vegetable garden can only be a good thing to think about. Got no problem if it's on the path or somewhere you can easily get to, of course. But what if it was under your vegetable garden? I'd love to hear if anybody's had any stories where they've had to dig up their allotment or their vegetable garden because of the services under the ground got ruptured. And I'm not just talking about water or drainage here. It could be electricity. It could be your phone line. There's quite a bit going on underneath the ground, underneath the soil, that we cannot see. So that has been a lot of what I've been thinking of this week. Not so much a lot of gardening. We're maintaining what we have with lots of water in, lots of pumping water around where we can as well. But there's a lot of maintaining going on. But overall, there's been a lot of observations going on that have really made me think a lot. And I love this sometimes. Sometimes it is good just to sit back and think and observe. Like I say, let me know if you've got any stories of this happening to you. Right, I'm going to head on down to the allotment where it's been a little bit thirsty down there. But in the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the supporters club this week. Well, it's that time of the podcast where we interrupt you and just ask you if you would be good enough to leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. Only takes you a few seconds, but it means the world to us, and it helps us get found by more people who might also be interested in learning how to grow more of their own food. But not only that, if you also want to help support this podcast, keep this podcast running, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. For just £5 a month, you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts that give you a bit more of an idea what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. But also, once a month, you will receive through the letterbox our seed pack, which gives you our monthly mini newspaper and a collection of seeds to sow that month. Now, I have designed it to work that all the seeds are to be sown in that very month, so they're not hanging around for months on end waiting to be sown. And I've also designed the mini newspaper to give you a few ideas of what to do that month, has a little checklist of things to tackle that month as well. I personally think it is a great guide, and I actually use it myself. Now, as an example, some of the seeds that we've actually sown this week has been corn salad, which is a really tasty crop, but one that we can also fit in empty spaces throughout our allotment or vegetable garden. But also beetroot. Now, beetroot is a fantastic staple, often grown here, and one that we really, really enjoy. Now, if that sounds like something you would be interested in joining up, then please head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk to find out more and hopefully sign up. Would love to have you there. Right, back to the gardening. Well, I'm down on the allotment now. And obviously the main thing that has been going on the allotment is making sure we're keeping on top of the watering. Been talking about this a lot lately because it has been dry. There's no escaping it, it has been dry. We haven't had any real rain for quite a while now. We did have a bit actually last weekend, but this week particularly we have hit one of our infamous heat waves that, it's been rather warm, to say the least. I pop down to the allotment pretty much every evening just to keep on top of the watering, but that was a struggle. I do try and visit the allotment every single day on my way home from work, but it has been a struggle in the evenings. I'm hot at work, and then doing work on the allotment just doesn't excite me when it's that hot. However, over the weekend, Friday, Saturday and Sunday for me, what I have actually done is I have gotten down the allotment about 6:30 in the morning, and I have worked solidly for 2 to 3 hours every single day. Mostly just sort of weeding and watering everything that needs attention. Nothing really big planned because we are still going through this heat wave. Once it cools down a little or rain is predicted, then I will start planting out more plants. But all the time we've got this heat wave going on, all the time it's warm, I'm not planting anything out or tackling anything too big, just purely because it is not worth the risk. We're going to lose too many, and if I can't get down here daily, we're going to lose a lot more. However, I've really enjoyed being down on the allotment early in the morning. The sun was up. Sunrise is about 4:30 in the morning, I think, but the sun was up. It was already warm by the time I got down here, but it was a manageable warm. And just 2-3 hours just dedicated to the allotment really did make a difference. The allotment looks a lot better for it. A lot of the areas I was unhappy with have been tackled, and we've got on top of a lot of the jobs that just are struggling to get done due to the heat. So it was well worth doing. I've really enjoyed it as well. I've really enjoyed being down on the allotment that early in the morning. I mean, it's early for me. And by the time I finished and got home, it was still sort of 9, half 9, which meant that I still had the rest of the day to do my own thing, most of it back at home in the home garden. But it didn't feel like I'd lost the day at all by getting down on the allotment that early in the morning. The wife certainly appreciated. The only downside is, of course, I have to go to bed that little bit earlier than usual because of needing to get up. Not the end of the world, because it's been easy to fall asleep in this heat. Now, some of the things that I've noticed on the allotment, my potatoes, first earlies and second earlies, are starting to die back, which we're harvesting the first earlies as we speak anyway, and we're getting a good lot of potatoes out of them, I have to say. But now they're dying back, it's a good sign that those beds are ready, or those potatoes are ready for harvesting. I would like to plant those up with more plants, but as I said earlier, it's just not worth the risk all the time it is this dry. That being said, the soil where the potatoes are growing is still incredibly moist because of the amount of straw that I've laid down as a mulch over the potatoes. Now, I am singing the straw mulch praises this year because it has made such a good difference that I'm going to be trying to do it every single year. It really has reduced the amount of watering that we need to do, particularly in the potato beds. Potatoes are generally quite thirsty plants. They need a lot of water. But to see them really taken care of with that very minimal watering has made a lot of difference. And the straw bale gardening as well, that's another thing that I'm singing its praises of. I've got 2 straw bales that I've set up as straw bale garden this year. And after the conditioning phase, we planted them up. The straw bales are so incredibly damp on the inside that all the plants in there are thriving as well. I do try and keep an eye on that. I do try to water them quite regularly, but actually the straw itself is so damp, I don't think it needs so much water. Now, how do I work out when my plants and my beds need watering? This is a good question. Something I talk about a lot is getting the watering right when we look after our plants. The thing is, we can overwater and we can underwater. Both are not great results. So what I tend to do when I first plant out my plants, I do water them daily, especially seeds and seedlings, just so they get established. Once they're established, I do start to reduce the amount of water, but I don't like to water all my beds every single day. I tend to look at my plants. If they are showing signs that they are looking thirsty, then they definitely need watering. But that takes experience. One of the other things that I do like to do is just sticking my finger in the soil. Now, this is a method that has been passed down through the years, and it's a good way. So I stick my finger in the soil, and if I can feel moisture when I get to the second knuckle, then I know we are good for moisture in the soil. The top might look dry, but that doesn't mean below the ground isn't. Now, added to that, what I also like to do, instead of watering daily, I like to give my plants a good soak in about once a week to really get the ground soaked. Why I do that is that then lets the water soak into the ground, go further down, and this encourages the plants to develop roots that go further down into the ground. When you water daily, what tends to happen is the plant's roots stay in the top surface because they don't need to search for water. When we water really well about once a week, this just encourages the plants to really search water and build bigger, stronger roots, which results in bigger, better plants. Now, one of the other things that people are saying to me a lot this year is that they're having a really hard time with dealing with the allotment or the vegetable garden because it has been so hit and miss due to the dryness of the weather. And often people are saying to me they're giving up this year, they've written this year off. It's a regular thing around this time of year. They're going to try again next year. Now, I hate that sort of defeatist attitude, I'll be honest with you. I prefer it when, if I have that sort of problem, I look at it and say, well, what can I do now? What have I learned? What can I do to improve my chances? Again, I often talk about the fact that there's plants that can fill in those spaces that we have at the moment, be it spinach or corn salad or carrots, anything like that can fit in those spaces. But one of the other things that I like to do is, of course, my green manures. I'm a big fan of sowing green manures. I'm not sowing any at the moment, but I am looking where we might sow green manures in the next few weeks. Now, I use green manures for several reasons. One, because they do cover the surface of the soil with plant material that hold the soil together. They just benefit the soil. They bring in pollinators. I'm looking at the moment, I've got certain areas where I've left some of one of my favourite green manures to grow. And it's got these big, beautiful purple flowers that just are attracting in the bees. And I'm loving that because it is just doing the job for me. And added to that, it is a legume, so it is potting nitrogen into the soil as well, which is going to benefit in the future. So I'm a big fan of green manures, and there are definitely certain green manures that you can sow at this time of year. It's well worth going to do some research and looking at what green manures you can sow, what are suitable for your soils, and how they're going to benefit you in the coming weeks. So if you are struggling at the moment, look at green manures. Highly recommend them. Right, it is time now to head on back home because I've got some good news for you about ladybirds. In the meantime, let's find out what Chef Scott has for us this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Hi, it's Scott here with this week's recipe. And because we are getting into the tomato season, I thought I would share a recipe using them the way I like them. Perfectly ripe and still warm, straight off the vine. Something you simply cannot achieve unless you have grown your own. And of course, the flavour of homegrown tomatoes are miles apart from shop-bought that are often picked when not ripe and grown for shelf life over flavour. And the recipe is homegrown tomatoes with anchovy, lemon, basil and caper dressing. Now, if you are not a fan of fish, Don't let the anchovies put you off here. They do not make the dish fishy. They kind of melt into the dressing and act as a seasoning rather than adding a fishy flavour. So, let's head to the kitchen and hear how it's made. As usual, you can find this recipe and others on the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk and on my Instagram page, Seed to Table Plot 13. For this recipe, you will need about 1 kilogram of homegrown tomatoes. If you have a mix of varieties and colours, then even better. And these just need to be cut into different shapes and sizes. You can slice some, cut some in half and cut some into quarters. This just looks better in the final dish. And then you will need 1 red onion finely diced, about 50 grams. 1 crushed clove of garlic, about 5 grams. 2 finely chopped anchovy fillets. I use the salted anchovies in olive oil. The zest of 1 lemon and the juice of half. 100 millilitres of extra virgin olive oil. 30 grams of chopped capers. 10 grams of chopped basil. And salt and pepper to taste. Method. Start by picking them lovely homegrown tomatoes and cut them into different shapes and sizes, and then put them onto a plate. Then mix all the dressing ingredients together and spoon it over the tomatoes and enjoy. And that's it from me this week.
Hey there, Richard. This is Sterling, all the way from Seattle, Washington. And I've been meaning to do this for a long time. I think I've been listening for now probably back before COVID. So what is that, like 6 years? My first podcast with you was searching for how to grow potatoes. And ever since then, listened to the back catalog and kept up with your new episodes. So anyway, I wanted to let you know I'd tried Chef Scott's rhubarb crumble. I did substitute a little bit of the rhubarb. I had some homegrown, but I didn't have enough, so I substituted some strawberries that we picked from a local farm and made some rhubarb strawberry crumble. My kids loved it. I loved it. It was fantastic. So thank you for that. Have a great one.
Well, I want to thank, of course, Scott for that recipe once again, but also Sterling for leaving that message. It's always good to hear from our listeners and give us some feedback like that. And Scott particularly is really enjoying hearing all the love everybody is having for his recipes at the moment. He is going from strength to strength, I have to say, and I want to thank Scott for doing this, and hearing all this lovely feedback is really encouraging for him as well as myself. I reckon one day Scott needs to start his own podcast. Now, one of the things that I heard on the radio this week was that ladybird numbers are in very high numbers. I'm hearing stories of swarms of ladybirds, which for me is very encouraging. I've got quite a love affection for ladybirds. There's something about them that just look like summer's here. It takes me back to my childhood, but I don't think we see as many as we used to. This year, however, I've seen quite a few ladybirds, and on the news it's been reported that there are large numbers of ladybirds this year. Now, apparently a swarm of these ladybirds disrupted cricket at Lord's on Thursday, distracting players and causing a brief pause in the contest against India. So there's definitely something going on, and it's being blamed on, if that's the right word, the warm weather. And what this means is the warm weather has meant there are more aphids. And because there are more aphids, there are more ladybirds. Ladybirds, of course, are a natural predator of aphids. And this is something I've noticed, I have to admit, apart from at the beginning of the year in my greenhouse or in my kitchen, we haven't had many problems with aphids, but I do try and encourage ladybirds and other predators into our allotment, into my garden, to take care of them. So it's very, very, very encouraging to hear that there are more ladybirds on the prowl. Now, this is again boils down to something that I've always tried to encourage. If we encourage the natural predators, such as ladybirds, such as birds, they will help keep the numbers of pests down. This is living proof of that. This is absolutely living proof of that. Now, this is also quite timely because a couple of weeks ago I was featured in a blog post from Thompson & Morgan all about natural pest control. And this is, again, I am a very big fan of using natural methods. I like to encourage ladybirds and birds just by making sure there's food out for them. I've got a little bowl with some rocks in it that they can drink from. I've got a bird bath with water in it. All these sort of things, providing habitats, providing homes, providing shelter for all these insects. Little pile of rocks, little pile of logs, all go to help create a good habitat. But then we can also sow seeds for plants that also help bring in these animals. Now, of course, there are other methods of bringing in these animals, including buying them from online. Now, I've got to admit, I'm not a fan of that. It feels wrong to me to buy in natural predators, but I can see why people do it. In fact, one of the things that I was really blown away with last year when I went to Autopot was the fact that inside their testing room, which is a sealed unit, they actually brought in natural predators to help deal with their pests that they may get. So there's a lot for it. There is a lot for it. And if you are having troubles, I do urge you to look at natural pest control. Now, it is time to wrap this show up. We will be back again next week, of course, but if you would like to get in touch, you can, of course, leave a voicemail just like Sterling by heading to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk, leave a voicemail. Alternatively, of course, you can leave a comment on the bottom of a blog post. And, of course, you can email me, Richard at Veg Grower Podcast, or you can find me on social media. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please do leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. We haven't had any rate and reviews come in yet, this week anyway, but I'm sure there will be more in the not too distant future. Also, I want to point out we are having a trouble with one of the podcast platforms, Podbean, which is a struggle. I'm not sure what's going on. All the other sites seem very easy when it comes to podcasts, but Podbean are incredibly difficult at the moment. I'm not sure what's going on there. But if you have been listening to Podbean, please be aware. I am aware it's not appearing on there. I'm trying my hardest to get it sorted, amongst many other things, of course. If you have enjoyed this podcast, want to help support the work we do, please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club, which details can be found at the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. I think that just about tackles everything. Right, until next time, please take care.